The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
So good afternoon, good morning, and for at least one of our audience, good evening, which just shows the global reach of our webinars. But welcome to this webinar, the latest in our series of how CDOs succeed. And today we're going to be looking at recruiting and retaining the workforce of the future, a data-centric approach, which I think is particularly apposite as we sort of begin to emerge from the constrictures of COVID, and there is a great talk about, if not the big resignation or the great resignation, but a lot of people looking to change how they work, how they interface with work, and indeed with the companies that they work for or with. So how CDOs can help in retaining that workforce will be really important, and is a really important building block in our series on how CDOs succeed. Next slide, please. So not all of you will be members of the International Society of Chief Data Officers. So a quick spiel on who we are. We're a group of data leaders, global data leaders, as I've already intimated, who get together to meet the Society's mission, which is broadly given on the slide in front of you. I'm not going to embarrass you by me reading it for you, but we are essentially trying to sort of build a society run by data leaders for data leaders that brings together exciting topics like this, exciting opportunities to meet, to share information, and to build on the knowledge, skills, and experience that you have as a data leader to enhance what you deliver in your place of business. Next slide, please. So for those of you who aren't members of the Society and are interested in joining, this is our website, iscdo.org. We're very keen to have you, to share. The more people we have bringing together their exciting experiences and sharing them, the better we as a collective will be at doing our jobs. And this is the gateway into that sharing experience, and I recommend it to you. Peter.
Thank you, Michael. Today's talk then is by Kevin Jones, and Kevin, interestingly, does not have the title Chief Data Officer, but he's clearly the person who is most in charge of the data at the Indiana Department of Child Services. And we heard him give this talk at another event. Kevin is a magnificent speaker. I hope that you all do this, but I want you to take away from this that while we can deliver good news to our bosses, that's good and it's fun. But if we can present our bosses with a story that they can tell to other people, that's where you really win at this point. And Kevin has a really wonderful set of career skills that he brings. He's a wonderful speaker. He's very deep technically, and he's crossing all sorts of boundaries. Kevin, I'm going to guess that you probably have maybe made some people upset along the way occasionally because you go a little far. Yeah, I can hear him laughing there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So again, as the CIO for the Indiana Department of Child Services, this is a story about how technology can be applied in a very practical way. And as Michael said, given that we're potentially facing the big resignation, et cetera here, this could be, I think, very relevant for your organizations, even if they haven't yet realized it. So with that, Kevin, I will take it over to you and look forward to this. And we'll come back in about 50 minutes or so with some Q&A.
Thank you. So I am trying to see, can you see my screen? Or hold on, let me share. Okay, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Now I have two screens, so I want to make sure, are you seeing the presentation part or are you seeing something different.
We're seeing your presenter's notes slide, so switch the screens.
Okay, so let's switch.
There you go. Whoops.
All right, I'll leave.
Is that right,
It's
everybody?
still the presenter.
Yeah.
It's still presenter, but I'll leave it here. Can you see it okay, or is it not? Let me do swap. There we go.
There you go. You got that one now.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you, guys. So thank you so much, Peter, for inviting me, and everyone here. I can't see who you are. I can't see you there, but I will say thank you so much for taking the time to hear our story. The story is one that's very important because we serve one of the most vulnerable populations, and one of the things that helps us be better at our jobs is ensuring that the tenure of our employees is longer than 18 months or 2 years, which is what it was when I first came to the organization in 2017. So thank you so much. I look forward to sharing with you, and hopefully something that we were able to accomplish and things or steps we taken on our journey can be applicable to some of the challenges you have, and you can apply some of those strategies and tactics and hopefully overcome some of the challenges that you guys are facing today and we all continue to face. So who is Kevin Jones? So um, uh, Kevin Jones is someone who loves to help people, and my role and responsibility with the Department of Child Services was as the CIO in 2017 when I joined the organization. Recently, I've had a transition, so I am now working in an advisory CIO role to help the organization. We're in the middle of a great digital transformation, replacing our child support system, which serves our entire state as well as our child welfare system. And we began this journey a little bit later than what we originally planned. So my time has been a little more extended than originally planned. So I am going to continue to support them as a contractor through my own personal LLC, as an advisory CIO, as they transition and implement new IT systems. But my current position now is transitioned to being the Chief Operating Officer for Cardinality AI, which is actually an integral part of the digital transformation and the ecosystem that is part of the legacy of the transformation at DCS. And that platform focuses on data analytics, machine learning, blockchain, artificial intelligence, being able to take data and make evidence-based decisions. And you'll see some of the steps we had to lay in the foundation of my presentation today. My education. So I am a student of everything. I like to learn and continue to learn, no matter where I'm at and from who that may be, even my own child sometimes. So I am a graduate from the Johns Hopkins University, Complex Systems Engineering, which gives me that technical breadth of knowledge and a passion for aligning the socio-technical enterprise, which is people, process, and technology, so that the things that we do can be driven and identified and analyzed by data and analytics and making evidence-based decisions. My undergrad work is at Purdue University in computer electrical engineering technology. I was focused on building IT systems, building at that time web-based e-commerce systems, cloud-based systems, and eventually evolved from being a IT tech geek to a person who's passionate about the operations and including especially data, which tells us what we should and shouldn't do. The Indiana Department of Child Services, when I joined the organization in 2017, and the focus for that organization when they brought me in is they was looking at digital transformation, and they were looking at also not just a digital transformation, the entire industry across the country was going through a transformation. They were moving from a Medicaid-based organization that was really focused on taking children out of the home to create a safe haven, versus now transitioning to going to a non-Medicaid based organization to keeping children in the home in a perspective called prevention. So preventing children from coming in our care and the trauma caused by separation from the family, and moving them into a more focused around providing the family with the tools, strategies, tactics, and even financial support that would enable them to be better parents, be a stronger family unit to provide the child with the needs. That is a complete transformation from what child welfare has been. And it required us to reimagine, how do we provide this level of support? How do we provide child welfare and services to families, not just the child? So it was an amazing opportunity for someone like me to come in and bring the strategies and tactics, bring the passion for data, the passion for technology, and even more so, the passion for helping people and creating the path and the journey for protecting the most vulnerable population in our society, children whose families are not capable of providing them the basic needs. They are the most vulnerable people on our planet. And it was, I can't tell you how amazing it has been to be able to help the group of people that serve them, which is 4,000 case managers in the state of Indiana. 4,000 people who go on the front lines every day and go out in the field, go into homes and do assessments. They make determinations on whether a child is safe to remain or not. And they put their livelihoods on the line every day for us and to protect the 6.7 million Hoosiers in the state of Indiana. We execute over 200,000 investigations a year, and we focus on whether or not a child is safe. And currently, one of the greatest things about what we've done, when I first came, we had 30,000 children in our care. We've been able to reduce that down to 18,500 children in our care. We've reduced the amount of children who come into our care at a rate of 34%. And at the same time, we've reduced the total number of deaths annually by close to 20%. So you don't see that curve of, hey, kids are staying home, but you're increasing risk. No, we're not. We're not increasing risk. At the same time, we're seeing a curve, not quite a 1-to-1 ratio, but pretty doggone close to the same rate at which we're leaving children at home. And that was accomplished not just by IT and not just by some of the things that I brought, but by an amazing leadership with Terry Stignan as the director and Eric Miller as our chief of staff. They brought lean transformation that couples very tightly with a transformation of digital transformation, and it enabled me to do what I'm passionate about, aligning people, process, and technology. One of the things I had to discover when I first came to DCS was they were looking at, and I will tell you, in a red state and many times, even in blue states, when you look at child welfare in the United States, we look at child welfare as one of those things where no one really wants to know this is what we do. We don't want to know that there is an agency or an organization that is focused on taking kids out of home. Nobody wants to know that. And nobody wants to know that, hey, I pay tax dollars to remove children from their home. That's traumatic. That's trauma, even to the ones who are not faced with that day to day. But one of the things we had to look at it when we were asked to reduce our budget for that, we did not know enough about our organization to even understand where can we make cuts in our budget that are sustainable and will still enable us to execute our continuity of business, which is child welfare and child support enforcement. Those are things that when me, I'm sure you guys as chief data officers, you want to be able to go to analysis and say, hey, I can reduce 30% here and know that there's not going to be an impact to our continuity of business. And nobody in our agency could tell us that. So we spent time sitting here, and when we got down to, hey, we need to make a budget cut to this level, we couldn't find even 10% of that to make a cut. So one of the things in my journey, I initially knew that where they're going to need me to focus is being able to identify the alignment between people, process, and technology, and be able to understand what is our true divide across our socio-technical enterprise, our IT systems, our users, and our processes, and where are the gaps, and how can we start to understand who we are as an organization. One of the things I had to really focus in on is, okay, let me understand who we are. Can we prove who we think we are versus who we know we are? And there are tons of strategies and there's a ton of techniques and tactics you can apply. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so I took advantage of an organization called Infotech, which Infotech has some great tools that you can go out and assessments you can go out and you can grab, and you can start to leverage those and start to get an identification of who you are from a data analytics perspective, who you are from an IT infrastructure perspective, and who you are as a people and process perspective, and allow me to start to put in on paper and put down in writing and give us a visualization of how do we execute, you know. And I think one of the things that was surprising was, for me it wasn't. I mean, I've seen organizations like this, so I already had my suspicions, but as an organization we thought we knew more about who we were than what we really were, and we didn't really have the ability to prove it. And we started to see scenarios where we wanted to make changes to our IT system. We want to make changes to our processes. We thought we needed more people, and what we really discovered was that none of those things even talked to each other. None of those things had alignment. We did not have the ability to truly understand. I knew at this point, now for me to go on this digital transformation, I was going to have to really start to prove. Starting with this type of data and this type of analytics, I was able to identify certain areas where we were missing, certain areas where we didn't understand anything about our business. And what we did understand was misaligned with our expectations. When you come back and you go back to your organization who's already put into the place of saying, hey, we need to make cuts, we need to reduce budget, I realized immediately, me going back and say, hey, I want to invest in this business intelligence, and I want to invest in machine learning and artificial intelligence because it's going to allow me to do these things like reduce our cut, identify our cut areas where we could cut, and identify the ability to make better decisions and improve. And theoretically, you know, even attorneys and accountants who run the state organizations, in theory, can see that. But if you cannot take evidence and say to them, this is how we're going to do that, and do it in a way that they can understand, not in tech terms, not in data analytics terms, but in terms of applicable, tangible evidence that becomes actions, you're not going to be successful in getting that approved. And I quickly realized that I had to identify strategically and tactically. I had to identify one challenge that everybody universally says DCS needs to improve and do better at. You cannot continue to do that. You can't continue to do this and it's sustainable. And there was one area where that was absolutely true. And that area was in our staff turnover. You'll see later it was abysmal, and it was to a point where it not only translated to, hey, we can improve and we know we need to do this, it actually turned into the opportunity cost to prevent staff turnover, reduce staff turnover, became actual cost in dollars and hard facts. That is universal. That speaks volumes to not just attorneys. It speaks volumes to not just CFOs. It speaks volumes to everybody who is a stakeholder, large and small, in your ecosystem. Identifying that is super important. And then once you identify that, taking and building a model that says, I'm going to convert my business intelligence, my data analytics into something I like to use, and I'm sure we've all heard before, enterprise performance management. I'm not just going to take data analytics that says, hey, we do this. I'm not going to take business analytics and say, hey, we do this. I'm going to convert it and combine the two and create actionable evidence-based decisions that state that not only do we do this and we should do this, if we do this, the result should be this. We will then measure those results. We will come back and evaluate those results, and we'll leverage. I don't care whether you're using Lean or Six Sigma. I will take that and build it within your continuous improvement model, which in this case was Lean, to say, based on this, this is what we see. This opened up an opportunity for not only to bring in data analytics and artificial intelligence and machine learning, it also allowed me to bring in robotic process automation. And we went on a journey where we actually converted and we identified all of our business processes. We built out the robotic process automation, and we're able to run analysis on any of our processes to say, hey, if I increase my workload by 50%, what will that do? What will my pain points be? We can run a robotic process automation simulation right now and start to see that if I do this, it's going to create bottlenecks at people. It's going to create bottlenecks in a process. It's going to create bottlenecks in my technology. So that was required for me to build that type of evidence so that when I tell leadership, when I go executive leadership, or even the governor's office that we're going to do this and this is the result, that happens. Explaining that from a technical term when it doesn't happen, that's difficult. And that is a quick way to get you back to a point where you have no credibility, you don't have the ability to get the budget you need. So you start with evidence-based. And this was groundwork that was difficult. This is the hard part, but it was required in order for me to maintain a level of credibility, to go from asking for a $100,000 investment to procuring and securing a $75 million investment for my agency to completely replace their infrastructure. Going back to the original issue, how do I find an issue that resonates with everyone, all of our stakeholders, top to bottom? We were able to identify one that did that. One, our staff turnover. We were at 54+% staff turnover in our case managers. Our case managers made up about 3,000 to 4,000 members of a 4,000 to 5,000 member organization. I was able to identify staff turnover and look at how many people we were leaving. And one of the things we discovered was we were losing that 54%, and we were losing most of those people within the first 2 years of their employment. And that is when you actually are spending all your money to train, and you don't get to recoup any of that funding until their third and fourth year. So they were going in and out the door, and you were just out the door. You were losing $60,000 for each worker going out the door. Our staff turnover at the time was costing us $60 to $72 million a year. I proposed a question to say, if I can help us identify why and then reduce our staff turnover, that could then fund our digital transformation. We were looking at a path, and I was aware of how we could potentially do that. So I asked for about $100,000 investment to start to build the platform that would give us the data and analytics to capture that. One of the things I discovered that on our exit surveys, which was required by our federal partners, required to do an exit survey, so we understood the staff turnover. And why? Because this was an epidemic across the entire country. We weren't the only ones with a 50+% turnover for our case managers. And what that equivocates to is 50% of the people who do the cases for these children were leaving. So we had children who had 3 or 4 case managers in a 2-year window. So being able to focus on that and reduce that was paramount to successfully providing the positive outcomes that we needed. So we decided to build data analytics, and we leveraged the Salesforce platform to build a staff turnover exit survey that would give us the insights that we need to actually start to understand, why are people actually leaving? Initially, everyone said, oh, we don't pay them enough. They're not getting enough in salary. So that was the default. So people were saying, hey, we need to give raises. Well, when you have a budget cut, you might not be able to get raises. So the default to that is, well, we're never gonna be able to resolve this problem. We took this and we built a survey, about 25 questions that were really particular and direct to give us what we need to understand. And prior to this, they were using another platform, another product, and they were getting like less than 10% of those surveys returned. So people were leaving and not finishing them. We built this, and I built some automation. I built some robotic process automation and some workflow that said, okay, once you put in your 2-week notice, when our HR person says this person's last date is this, our system automatically sends a text message and email and says, fill out your exit survey. If you don't do it within a couple of days, you get another message. It says, hey, you haven't done your exit survey, please complete that. And if you don't, we then send it to your supervisor's supervisor to say, before this person leaves, make sure they fill out the exit survey. Glad to report, we went up to like 98% return on all of these surveys. 3 years later, we're still at 90+% return on all the surveys that we've sent out. plus or minus 3 to 5%. And even higher than that, because it's now a standard to where people, when they leave and they forget to do their survey, they will take the time to go and fill one out by paper and send it back to our HR just to make sure that their voice is heard as to why they're leaving. One of the things we discovered that was over about 50+%, 53% of our people were leaving because they didn't understand the responsibility in the job prior to coming to the organization. That's amazing. You accept a job and you don't really know what it is. And many of us have done that. How many of us have accepted a job on the job description that states X, but when you get there, you discover that it's actually Y. So many of us have done that. But when you're talking about an ecosystem that is focused on risk prevention and risk management, our risk is prevention of loss of life, less so prevention of loss of property. But in a prevention of loss of life ecosystem and continuity of business, it is imperative that they understand and you give them the ability to understand what they're signing up for so that you can have that consistent support from beginning to the end. We took this as an opportunity, and again, me using my complex systems engineering background, data analytics, following the steps. I got data analytics. I have the surveys and the proof. I asked for another $100,000 to say, hey, if I get another $100,000, I can then invest in virtual reality that will give them a simulated experience on whether or not they want this job. Because we were working with Accenture, we were able to build 2 virtual reality scenarios that simulated 80% of the job. So think about in your interview process, you can go through a simulation that shows you 80% of what you're going to deal with on a daily basis. For me, that was an amazing, and that's something that we do when I build systems that are for simulating any other process. I would look at that and I would use that and make my decisions based on that. So giving that same and applying that same theory to this scenario, we were able to start to put all of our interviewees through these VR headsets and these 2 scenarios to give them an opportunity during the interview process. Do you want to do this for the next 3 to 5 years? Are you willing to take this job knowing that you're going to have to go through into a home where mom and or dad may be drunk or high on drugs? You see a child who has been abused and bruises on her arms, and the home is trashed. You see maybe roaches and all kind of other things crawling around. Are you willing to do that and put yourself in the midst of that trauma yourself over the next 3 to 5 years? We were able to bring that theory, bring that to our scenario, bring that to our people, and give them the opportunity to understand what they're getting into prior to going into. And it's also a reciprocal. We're able to then analyze a candidate. Does this candidate have the base root skill set that we need, that we can then convert them into the type of resource that we can use and we would expect them to be? So it's a interview and an interview. They interview us, we interview them, and we get to see them in these scenarios and understand, hey, I can work with this person. No, I probably could not help this person become the type of resource I need. One of the things I wanted to do, again, being an engineer, being a data person, I wanted to then take that data and I want to start to build analytics off of that data. Accenture built the VR, but me and one of my engineers, Graham Lester, we said, okay, we're going to take this headset home and we're going to look at the Oculus, and we're going to get to the nerdy part. We're going to rip files off of that Oculus and we're going to take it and parse that data out, and then we're going to start to build profiles of every time someone goes through that scenario. And that's exactly what we did. We were able to pull that data off, and we were able to create an integration using MuleSoft into our Salesforce platform, and then take all of that data, take the analytics, and I could see every question that a person asked. I could see their session, and I could see their questions. I could see how long they took to respond. I can give them points and score their points based on what they were their answer and how they answered it. And I can take that and build a score for that person. Build a profile score of that person and understand, well, this person scored this, my limitations on my training, and you'll see later in my presentation how we compensate that and why that's very important. My limitations on my training capabilities would not be able to bridge the gap between this person's base skill set with this score and where we need them to be successful, where they need to be, where the other individuals who stay longer than 3 years, who stay long and are capable of executing are, that we don't have the ability to make them into the resource. So this person sits in a tier that may or may not be our top candidate, but they are still a candidate. And then it gives us the ability to make evidence-based decisions, not just on, hey, this job is something you want, would you want it or not? But make evidence-based decisions on who is the best candidate to invest in, who are the top tier candidates to bring in, and how we build our backlog of individuals who are willing to come and work in our organization before we invest $60,000 into that resource. One of the things we really wanted to look at is how can I align that staff development and take staff development and say, we not only there is a shortage or these type of resources are available to us, we can look at our backlog and say, okay, we're now getting to a point where we don't have enough resources to not change how we train. We need to start changing and continuously improving our training to support this backlog. Hey, we need 1,000 new case managers. We look in our backlog, we have 1,000 case managers, but their score is one that we cannot get them to a point where they need to be. Well, we need to add and or supplement our training to give them what they're missing. What are they missing? What are they lacking? How can we improve our training based on evidence yet again, because we captured it. We know where the market's supply of employees sit and the things they need, so we can add to our training and say, hey, if we add this to our training, these 1,000 people will become good candidates moving forward. So we're able to now provide that same data to our staff development and say, your gaps in training, your gaps in development, your gaps in continuous improvement are here. Let's focus our resources and our effort in improving and bridging those gaps so we can now make these 1,000 people qualified candidates and bring them into our ecosystem to help us serve the public that we need. We looked at VR, how we could align our virtual reality platform, our BI platform to get that enterprise performance management and continuous improvement to improve all areas of our staff development. So now I can supply my HR group with 1,000 qualified candidates that were not really available to them prior to that. That type of evidence and that type of data as to why they're not and how we can make them, it doesn't stop with they're not qualified. It says they're not qualified, but if we do this, then they will be qualified. If we do this, we will have a backlog of resources to be able to come in and help us improve. And then we introduce a whole nother perspective. That is the key, bringing in a whole nother perspective into our organization, because we've been stuck in this way all this time. We then bring new perspectives of those 1,000 people that can help us look at more reflective of the diversity that we need. We can't just bring diversity. That creates a potential risk and impact. But you can improve your organization to open them up to be able to accept and receive the diversity without the negative impact, without the volatility that brings into the organization, because you evolve leveraging the data and the evidence that you need, because it told you how and when and where to evolve. One of the things we really wanted to do is to start to leverage that and bring that into how do we prepare for the future talent that is there. We haven't been available for those. We haven't done this. We've done things for 30 years the same way. We have baby boomers, we have Gen Xers, now we have millennials are coming in. We have to evolve. But how do you do that? How do you put yourself in a situation where you can evolve? Leveraging the data that we had, leveraging the opportunity and understanding that, we can then create the evolution of our staff development, our training, organization, to not just say we've evolved our process, we've evolved our technology, now we can evolve our people. We can evolve how our people are accommodated, what we do. But the new individuals and new groups have come in and started to leverage this technology and use this technology. It's been enlightening, and even more so for some of our seasoned veterans. You'll see that later in the presentation as well. Some of our seasoned veterans, they were amazed at some of the biases they had developed over time. I've been doing this for 30 years the same way. I didn't realize what I'd done. Well, guess what? 30 years ago, that's a couple of generations that are different. You have a couple of different generations of people who are raising. Some of those children that were 30 years ago in our system are now the same parents repeating that cycle. What can we do to improve so that when we do have children in our system, they don't become individuals who repeat that cycle? These are things that we're able to leverage by leveraging technology that opens us up to more perspectives, more individuals, technology that gives us an experience that we didn't have, and also gives us enlightenment on our current capabilities and how we have evolved or the lack thereof. The next step, and also as part of my next step and the next part of my journey with my career, is taking all of those things we talked about, the virtual reality, the business intelligence, enterprise performance management, and then taking those things with our staff development, our training, taking those things and building that continuous improvement model in our staff development training, but leveraging Cardinality AI, which is a part of our child welfare system. But it also has a learning management system that we're working with the state to look at how that can be leveraged and will be leveraged to identify our training modules. And in identifying our training modules, using machine learning and artificial intelligence to understand from our data and our evidence gained from our virtual reality sessions that we capture, not just from new employees, but also from during our training. It is now a part of our training in your new cohort, so your first 3 years. We also do sessions with our seasoned veterans so we can capture how are people who've been here for 10 plus years responding to this, giving the opportunity for those individuals to be observed and trained, not just from a negative, but from a positive. Hey, let's use that technique with this person. And then also, more importantly, for 4,000 people who have some level of autonomy to make decisions, bring self-awareness data. That situational awareness information about who I am and who I am not as a resource for the state of Indiana, who executes the continuity of business of child welfare enforcement, bringing situational awareness data to an individual to say, oh my goodness, I developed this bias and I have biases towards mom's boyfriends in these scenarios, and I've created the opportunity to trigger an emotional response. Then I use that emotional response to remove a child from a home where otherwise I would not. And I created additional trauma to a child because I took them away from mom. Situational awareness data that can save a life, that can save and improve the quality of a child's life, because you don't introduce additional trauma from that because you made a decision and or you triggered a response. We were able to bring that to them, taking that data, taking that analytics, taking the scenarios and building a machine learning model that can look at creating what we call a couple things. One is the sentiment of the employee. How do they feel? We also created surveys, additional surveys that we give 30, 60, 90 days and annually to see, are you still in good state? Are you still happy with your job? And then we can take those statuses. I'm happy today. I've been happy for the last 6 months. I've been happy for the last year. But this year or next year, I'm not happy. We can take that and look at how, when they're happy, how are children being provided the positive outcomes? Are children getting the outcomes they need faster? When you're not happy, does it take longer? Does the kid stay in our care longer? We could take that machine learning module and look at all of that information, build our training, build a sound support system, understanding that a supervisor in this county has lost 10 people in the last 6 months. They may be dealing with something at home and they bring it into the office and it's impact the workers and those workers are leaving. We actually have business cases where that's happened. And we've actually used this data and evidence to move supervisors to new positions, to move supervisors out of positions, and immediately see the improvement in that office. See the improvement translate down to children getting to permanency quicker, getting the outcomes they need. We're able to see those types of alignment with this data and this analytics. And this leveraging the Cardinality platform and the Redbird AI will bring us back around to be able to tie how we need to improve our training and our development to support what we're getting from our virtual reality in our interviews, our virtual reality in our training and our cohorts, period, our virtual reality in our seasoned worker period, and understanding how we can improve it and what needs to be improved and where it needs to be improved, and provide that insight to our staff development training team so they understand and can stay in alignment top to bottom, complete traceability from the beginning of our ecosystem down to our training and the type of resources we put out into the field. That is the power of what we're doing and leveraging data and analytics and how it can be applicable to solve tremendous problems. What I have here to you as we wrap up my part of the session as far as the presentation is the business case. And we started with the challenge of staff turnover and really wanted to look at how can we improve that. You know, we identified that through the data and analytics we were able to capture, and we saw that virtual reality, giving them a simulated opportunity, would give them a chance to see that. And we decided we were going to take this period and we were going to make all of our interviewees go through the scenario. And we chose 2 counties. We have 92 counties, but we chose 2 counties, our 2 largest counties where most of our hiring was done to start with. And what we did was we identified there was 119 people that historically we would have said, okay, you fit enough, we're going to offer you a job. We said, okay, we're gonna start with these 119 people, and instead of you just offering them a job blanketly like we would have in the past, put them through the VR scenarios. We put those 119 people through the VR scenarios, and as our supervisors watched those people, they said, oh, you know what? There's about 60 people that I probably would not offer a job now. So they put them through the scenario, and that was the end of their process. They were no longer continued as a part of the process, although we still have those, we capture those sessions. I have those responses. We can score that person. We can call them back later. But we put those individuals through the session, and we saw that, hey, only 59 of those people were actually people that we would have offered a job. That right there is opportunity cost avoidance of training 60 people, 50%, more than 50%, more than 50%. That's $35 million that we've already saved, $30 to $35 million that we've already of cost avoidance save our agency just with that. But it continued. We went even further. And after we extended an offer to those 59 people, only 32 people accepted. Only 30 people said, you know what? Yeah, this is not for me. Yeah, half of the people we looked at, they discovered this is not what I want. The other half said, or we discovered this is not who we want to hire. The other half said, you know what? I'm not interested in it either. And only 32 people accepted. After a year, we went back and we did our evidence, we did our review. After a year, 26 of those people were still there. We were at 23% as of my last week with DCS as the CIO. We were at about 23% of the 23% on our staff turnover based on those individuals who were in this process. That is a 30% reduction in our staff turnover for our overall staff turnover in a COVID world. That's amazing. And that money, that reduction, that cost avoidance was enough and is enough to fund our digital transformation for our child welfare system. One of the things we want to look at is not just, hey, you know, we had great results in, you know, looking at how can we actually reduce that staff turnover, but we always want to continuously improve. So we had surveys after they go through the scenario. we get information back, and some of the things you can see from just in our HR hiring group test case or study group. Some of the things they said, it was eye-opening, slightly surprised at the emotion that went into the scenario. And that's one of the things that we were super excited about, was that when you're going into a scenario where it's real, where you're completely immersed, you can't avoid the emotional content of that scenario. And they all were able to experience that. And they were like, you know what? Like bullet point number 3, experience emotionally difficult. And that's really what most people quit. They come in, we get trained, and then we give them 3 or 4 months of training before they even go out to the field. So when they go out to the field and they experience for the first time, I can't do this, I quit. Well, we prevent them, and we prevent our agency from losing 3 to 6 months of cost in training an individual, paying their salary, paying our trainers to train them, paying all those things for them to go and experience it one time and leave. That's real dollars. When you take that across the street to your governor's office, that's real money. That's real money. When you take it to your executive leadership, that's real money. These are real things that were stated after that, and real reasons why people were not offered opportunities to work for our DCS, not accepting opportunities to work with our DCS, because this is a real thing, and VR allowed us to actually discover that. If you look at the cohorts in training as they're going through, which is our second group, you look at what they were able to discover as they went through. They discovered, hey, this is engaging. I improved my ability to engage. I improved my ability to observe and inquire and interpret behaviors. I improved my ability to articulate verbally and in writing. Why? Because the scenario, if you talk softly during this, the virtual reality will say, hey, I couldn't hear you. Why are you talking so soft? It will actually jar you and trigger you to engage appropriately. It requires that from you. It demands that from you. Our cohort trainees, they talked about exactly the same thing. This was awesome. It allowed me to see the reality of being an FCM and seeing different situations and practicing how to talk to people and what to ask. So we're improving our people's ability to do their job before they get an opportunity to do it. And not only that, they were prepared during the hiring process, but they're also prepared by having hours on top of hours of sessions with this. No different than an airline pilot who goes through simulation for 10, 20,000 hours before they get behind the plane. Same perspective, prevention of loss of life. We wanted to take it a step further and even look at how can we, or what do we get as a result from our seasoned employees over 10 years of experience. And we were surprised that they were even giving us responses that they were improved, 55% improved in engaging families. 10 years of experience, and in a simulation, you identify self-awareness and situational awareness things about yourself that make you improve. 69% improve in observing and inquiring and interpreting behavior, not triggering and making triggers of emotional responses and using those triggers to bring and take children out of the home. 69%. If you look at some of the things they talk about in our season group, it says it was eye-opening. It opens your eyes to other ways to investigate. It makes it, I feel like it brushed me up and on observing and interacting better. Those are the keys that you need in making decisions, and those decisions ultimately impact children for the rest of their life. These are the things, and this was the power of introducing virtual reality to our organization, leveraging data and analytics to make evidence-based decisions, and telling the story that needs to be told for our organization to procure and to receive funding, to continue to improve, to continue to digitally transform our organization and put technology in a way that it can support all of the amazing things that Terry Stigdon and Eric Miller and the men and women who work at DCS are doing for improving them as individuals, improving them the processes so that they support children, and helping me to align our technology so I can respond appropriately to their need for change and give them the things that they need. I leave you with one of my mantras for myself: be water. It is definitely a Bruce Lee quote, but be water. What does that mean? That means that don't try to force a solution. Don't try to force your organization down your path. Be open to create solutions that allows you to collect the information you need. So you can use data and analytics to make decisions and let the data, the analytics tell you what to do. You don't tell it what to do. And I live my life by making evidence-based decisions and continuous improvement. So in that case, Peter, I will say I am more chief data officer than a chief information officer because I totally believe that evidence-based decisions are the ones that provide the solution. I don't own the solution. I own the execution. And in executing, I must listen to what the data is telling me to do. Thank you, guys. I appreciate the time to present. And if there are any questions, I'm open to answer them.
We do have some right away, Kevin. Thank you for a great presentation. And I just have to ask before I jump into the questions here, do you also do martial arts? Is that where the water comes from?
Yeah, actually, I did as a young kid. I
There you go.
studied martial arts for sure.
Fantastic. Well, I want everybody in the audience just to take a step. And if you do have questions for Kevin, by all means, drop them into the chat function. I've got a couple in there already. We'll get to those very quickly. But here's a story that started out, and it had all the recipes for disaster from my perspective. I've worked in the same environment that you have, Kevin. Child welfare is a hard task. And you looked at this and said, where is a bunch of money I can save? Found $70 million in a state budget that you were able to save. And then you went to management and said, and I'm going to solve it with VR and AI. Most management in state agencies goes, no, we're barely keeping our existing systems up and running. We can't go for any of this fancy stuff. But you've given, as you said a couple of times, a very good case on this. And it's just a wonderful story. I will be pointing this to other people to take a look at. But let me jump into the questions here. Dennis is asking the question here, how do you go about generating hypotheses for possible root causes of high staff turnover to include on exit surveys? So I guess
So
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so there were generally. So I will start with the feds actually have a general number that they look at. There's about 12 bullet points. One is supervisor impact paperwork. The amount of paperwork that they have, that's like number 2 on our list. It was like 30% of the people left because of the amount of paperwork you have to do, and then the amount of just work in general you have to do that is not practicing their practice, which is social work. And then we took the general normal state personnel or personnel types of impacts of why people leave in general. So we started there, and then we've evolved that over time. So we've added things like COVID, we've added our back to work. So we listen and we think about what change we're implementing, and we look at the change that we're implementing as well as just the general basics. And we started there, and 3 years later, those questions are completely different. They've evolved over time. So we continuously improve those questions as well.
And you've mentioned that several times. I want to go back to your systems engineering because you said complex systems engineering at Johns Hopkins. Most people think of that and think mathematics. I think from your perspective, it meant something different. Could you talk about that for a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Complex systems engineering is 100% about the social technical enterprise. It has nothing to do with IT. So all of the disciplines, like when in my master's program, there were people who were computer engineers or electrical engineers or mechanical engineers. There were others who started systems engineering. But complex systems engineering is taking more so, it's the engineering of what you would consider organizational leadership now. So you're taking an organization, you look at the people and all the stakeholders, you look at the process, and you look at what tools you have to accomplish people to execute a process. So the process is the foundation, and I have 20 people to do this job. Well, if it's really the job of 50 people, then I need to build tools that allow these 20 people to work like 50 people and to accomplish the outcomes that we need. So it's really the alignment there, nothing to do with technology, nothing to do with mathematics, just completely getting the limitations of the people you have and the requirements of a process to achieve the outcomes no matter what you need to do.
And it goes back to your quote, be the water, right? Because you've got to find out where you could be helpful as opposed to saying, no, I'm the CIO, therefore I can control technology, and other things are other person's problem. As a person who finds this, I think this question here is asking specifically about your future plans. It sounds like you've got something that can detect bias as people come into various situations. I wonder if there's any thought of taking that into a more commercialized opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm definitely working on that machine learning model. I mean, so two things. We worked with Accenture. Accenture also built a bias scenario. So we now have a virtual reality scenario that actually trains bias and trains out bias. But absolutely, we want to take that and look at the implicit bias, and we want to just, I think one of the things it starts with is this situational awareness in general. Sometimes when you start with just giving people self-awareness of what they're doing, and they don't know it. I mean, you don't know it over time. It's just routine to you. And I think we really focus in on that. We absolutely, that's a part of the cardinality AI model that we're going to be building, and we continue to support and grow and develop over time so that we can help organizations help identify implicit bias they have in their actions.
Here's another question. Can you describe how you see, you're a CIO, or at least your role was a CIO is what they're saying in this question. Can you describe what the partnership should look like between a CIO, the data people, whatever they are, and management?
So I think the relationship should be the data analytics people own the model, and we do have teams like that. I was given one of my data analytics team. And I think if you split data analytics into two different pieces, there's data analytics for execution, there's data analytics for research. CIO should not own the research. That should be, and the CIO should not have a research team. Your data scientists shouldn't be there, but your engineers, the people who are building your queries, the people who own the technology, absolutely, they sit in the CIO's position or in that ecosystem. I should be supporting your need for that. I wanted to do that. I try to build that dynamic and really help build my data scientists, give them the ability to build their own queries. So what you need to bridge that gap is key. You need a master data model that is clear, concise, and you build a relationship between your data research and your analytics team and your data analytics infrastructure team so that you continuously improve that data model. You can constantly communicate. So when we make changes to the IT system, it's reflected in the data model. It's reflected in the data dictionary. So your research and evaluation team can go out and see, okay, now I need to pull this data from this part. I need to pull it from that part. But that master data model is critical for separating your data analytics and your CDO group from your CIO and the data analytics team that needs to exist in that group.
All right. Well, it's a complex task all the way around. We've probably got time for one more question here, and this one addresses the PPT that you talked about, the people, process, and technologies. I think they're referencing some of my stats in here. We've got good stats that say 80% of the problems in data are people and process problems and not technology. I think what the question's asking is how do you see that as replicated in state government? And again, in your experience, how can we get people to understand what that means when we say that most of the problems are people and process problems?
So I will say this. Peter, before I came to state government, I would have said that. In state government, there's a significant difference. The problem is, and I'll say this qualifying, where technology is not a limitation, people and process are the factor. And what does that mean? Well, the case management system that I inherited when I first came to this group, it did not have relationships between data. It did not have the ability for me to make changes that normally would take you 3 days was taking 3 years. So when they had a process change, they couldn't rely on IT to be in lockstep with them to be able to say, we're changing process. I need you to change the IT system to support that. In theory, that's how it should be. In this case, it wasn't. That's why the digital transformation was needed. So now once our digital transformation is done, we will be able to continuously improve, and then it will transfer to where people and the process are out of alignment. The tools are there to support it. So the tool is not the limitation. It will definitely be people and process at that point.
And it sounds like your new position then is going to enable you to continue to oversee and contribute to the existing effort, but broaden those efforts in the ways that you were describing around
Absolutely.
all this. Well, Kevin, we are out of time at this point. Again, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule and wish you super success with your new career field on this. And I hope that as you continue to have results like this coming out of here, that other folks will be able to take advantage of it, and you'll come back and talk to us more about these others here. Hang on, there's one more. Let's see. Okay, no, that's exactly, we are good. All right, excellent. Well, again, thank you, Kevin. We will get this up. If you'll send me a copy of your slides, I'll make sure they're posted with the presentation. So in case a couple people missed this, they're already asking, can they have a copy? We'll get them to you as well.
Absolutely. I'll send it to you in a PDF. I'll email it as soon as we get off here.
Super, Kevin. Thank you so much for taking time today and joining us. And thank you all for joining us for the ISCDO How CDOs Succeed webinar today.
All right, Peter, so I am going to send that to you. Let me know if you need anything else from me. I really do appreciate you allowing me to share, man. This is an awesome opportunity.
Again, just all sorts of people coming up and saying thank you so much, and good presentations and all sorts of things in the chat here as well, Kevin. So we appreciate it as well.
So I'll talk to you later. If you need anything from me, let me know.
We'll be in touch. Take care.
Bye-bye.